Welcome to Travel and Expense Reimbursement 101 for the new SAP Concur Travel and Expense Reimbursement System. In this session, we'll get comfortable navigating the new system, exploring your profile, and submitting an expense report. There are a number of financial information systems. Let's begin by ensuring we're all talking about the same system. The SAP Concur Travel and Expense Reimbursement System is used to request reimbursement for money that you have paid out of pocket for approved Carlton business. As always, this includes both travel and non-travel expenses. If you have questions about the other systems on this slide, there are resources available on carlton.ca/fax, or you can email financial.systems@carlton.ca. The current travel and expense system is end of life and unsupported by the company that created it. So if it breaks, we can't fix it. The current system also runs on Flash, which will no longer work as of December 31st, 2020. We all want timely reimbursement for out-of-pocket expenses, so it's critical that we replace this system now. So what is changing? The policies that govern what you can be reimbursed for will not be impacted by the system change. If a policy allows you to claim something in the current system, you'll be able to claim it in the new system. You will retain your current roles. For example, if you're an approver in the current system, you will be an approver in the new system. If you already have an account, you won't have to request an account in the new system. The only thing that will change is the system that you use to enter and approve claims. In the new system, users will no longer require posting on funding sources. Let's take a closer look at what that means on the next slide. At Carlton, the funding source is defined by a focal accounting string made up of fund, organization, and program codes. For financial services, for example, that would be 100,439,1300. The index is a short code for the fund, organization, and program numbers. The intent of the index is to make your life easier. Here's how it works. If you are charging to a departmental funding source, it will either be operational or ancillary. If it is operational, a D replaces the 100,000 fund code. This is true for all departments. If it's an ancillary, an A replaces the fund code. In both these cases, it's the org code that is unique among departments and ancillaries. So this is added after the letter. In the first example, Financial Services Index becomes D498. In the second example, Residences Index is A647. Research indexes are easy. They are always the 6-digit fund number. So coming back to no longer require posting on funding sources, this means that users don't need to ask for posting access. Approvers and processors can change the index on request reports that they are approving. This also means that approvers have to pay close attention to the funding source on the requests and reports. So as I mentioned before, the new system has no impact on the policies that relate to the travel and expense reimbursement system. So once again, the related policies don't change as a result of the new system. Travel pre-approval. Unless you have received an email indicating that you are a frequent traveler, you still need evidence of pre-approval, and you have to attach a pre-approval email to the claim. If you have questions about this, direct them to Valerie Evans, the Director of Business Operations. I will walk you quickly through this flowchart. So here's how you answer the question, do I require pre-approval? So the first question, are you expending to a sponsored research fund? If the answer is yes, then evidence of pre-approval is not required. If the answer is no, then you have to ask yourself, have you been designated a frequent traveler? If the answer is no, you must provide evidence of pre-approval in the form of an email that you attach to your claim. If the answer is yes, you have been designated a frequent traveler, then you've been granted approval and do not need to provide evidence of pre-approval on a trip-by-trip basis. Again, if you have any questions about this, we'll ask that you direct them to Valerie Evans, the Director of Business Operations. Alright, I'm going to move over to SAP Concur where we'll explore the landing page. Before I do, I'd like to point out the red box on this slide. Wherever you see this box on a slide, there will be a related how-to sheet on carleton.ca/facts/travel. The how-to sheet will provide step-by-step instructions to complete the task that I'm showing you. Something to keep in mind before we begin the first demo. We volunteered to begin using SAP Concur's new user interface. We did this because it works better, and we don't want you to have to learn a new user interface in 2021. But on the downside, it is possible that there may be one or two bugs to deal with. Alright, this is the landing page. The first thing I'd like you to do when you log in is to click on Profile. I always like to begin by pointing out how to sign out, so you don't end up like Alice down the rabbit hole. You can sign out here. Alright, so you'll click on Profile Settings. I know there's a lot of options here. However, the Finance Information Systems team has pre-populated all mandatory fields for you. There are, however, 3 tasks that you should complete the first time you log into SAP Concur. You'll find the first under Request Settings and Request Approvers. So you can confirm your approver on this screen. Also called a one-up supervisor, this is the person that you directly report to. This person approves all of your travel and expense reports. In your account, you'll see your approver's name. In the training site, the name isn't necessarily correct in the training site. However, you should see your approver's name the first time you log in. If your approver is not correct, email financial.systems@carleton.ca and they'll update it for you. Alright, so the second thing you should check is under Expense Settings and Expense Information. So the default index is pre-populated by the Financial Information Systems team, and this is automatically applied to all reports. You can't change it yourself. If the pre-populated funding default is incorrect, email financial.systems@carleton.ca. So the index is right here. Again, this is a training account, so this is a dummy index, but for me it would be D498. So this will be D498 would be applied to every single report that I submit. However, I can always change the default index at the report level if needed. So this one, if you want to change the default, you have to email financial.systems@carleton.ca, but we'll take a look in a minute at changing the default to something else at the report level. Alright, so the last task to complete in your profile is to verify your email address. You'll find it under Your Information and Email Addresses. Your Carleton CUNET email address is pre-populated for you. So again, in the training environment, this isn't the real email address. This would be my Carleton CUNET email address. So you must verify this email address before you can begin emailing receipts to receipts@expensit.com. So why would you want to do this? When you email receipts to receipts@expensit.com, SAP Concur will read those receipts using optical character recognition and will create expense lines for you. So to verify the email address, you're going to click on Verify and then follow the prompts. You can also add up to 4 personal email addresses. This is handy if your receipts go to your personal email. So there's a how-to sheet that outlines how to go through all of the steps for verifying your email address and also the other tasks that we just talked about. Okay, so now I'm going to scroll up and click on SAP Concur in the upper left-hand corner to return to the landing page. Okay, so in the center of the screen, you'll find links to tools, support, and training under Company Notes. We know that Company Notes isn't really Carleton language, but just below you have Welcome to Carleton Community. Click here for Facts, Tools, Support, and Training. So when you click on the red text, you'll see the recording of this presentation. There'll be how-to sheets which provide instructions for completing specific tasks. You'll also find a link to book virtual office hours And then there'll be other tools listed as well. If you have eagle eyes, maybe you've noticed that in the upper right-hand corner there's a small help button. This is generic SAP Concur documentation. Really for help, I would go here because this has been customized by us for the Carleton community. Alright, so there's two more things that I'd like to touch on before we move on. There's a lot of real estate used up for My Trips. This is associated with an app called TripLink for those who travel a lot. Time will tell how many people will use this particular app, but for 101 we're going to go ahead and ignore it. If you have questions about how TripLink works or how you can take advantage of it, email financial.systems@carleton.ca or book a virtual office hour and they'll tell you all you need to know about it. So the other thing on this page is I just wanted to point out alerts. So throughout SAP Concur, alerts are generally yellow or red, and they'll let you know when you have to fix something before you can move on when you're submitting a report. Here they've used the word alerts when really what they're doing is just letting you know about additional features in SAP Concur. So if you want to know about additional features, you're welcome to explore them here. But alerts in this instance doesn't tell you there's something that needs to happen. It's just giving you a heads up that there's additional features that you could explore if you want to. So clearly there's a lot more on the landing page, but we're going to leave it at that for now. Demo 2. I'll create an expense report to request reimbursement for out-of-pocket expenses when there is no cash advance request. So this can be travel or non-travel. So let's take a closer look. In this demonstration, I have received approval to purchase software. I've made the purchase and I would like to be reimbursed. The first step. There are multiple ways to access and complete most tasks in SAP Concur. I'll keep it simple and show you one. I think the most intuitive way to start is to click on the giant New button and choose Start a Report from the drop-down menu. So we begin by filling out the header. SAP Concur has question mark icons above most fields. Click on them to determine what goes in any given field. Required fields have a red asterisk. So we'll begin with the report name. So if we click on the Quick Help, it says choose consistent and unique report names. For travel claims, the recommended format is destination and date. For non-travel claims, the recommended format is type of expense and date. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and write software August 2020. For report date, I'm going to leave the default date, that's the current date. And then for purpose, select the best fit for the expenditures from the drop-down list. In this case, I'm going to choose Other. If I choose Other, a comment is mandatory, so I'll add that before I move on. For report type, Other non-travel. So use this report type when you're claiming a non-travel out-of-pocket expense. For professional expense reimbursement, faculty only, you're going to use this report type if you're a faculty member claiming out-of-pocket expenses against your professional expense reimbursement fund, and then travel. Use this report type when you're claiming any travel expenses. So in this case, it's Other non-travel. Your affiliation with the university for the purpose of a given report. So faculty members claiming against a research index will select Primary Co-Investigator. Faculty members claiming against a departmental index will choose Faculty Non-Grant Funds. So as staff, I'm going to choose the staff option. Okay, so I'm going to leave the Pay By as direct deposit. And then we come to is delegate submitting also claimant's supervisor or approver. So the default is not acting as a delegate. So if I'm acting on my own behalf, I just have to leave the default. If, however, you are a delegate, then you have to answer the question of whether you are also the claimant's supervisor or approval. So if the answer to that is no, then you'll go ahead and select no. If the answer is yes, you'll go ahead and select yes. So for example, if you're an administrator and you're submitting something on behalf of a student, then likely the answer is yes, because you're also acting as the student's claimant or supervisor in that particular instance. But as I'm acting on my own behalf in this example, I'm going to choose not acting as a delegate. And again, that was the default, so we'll just go ahead and leave it. So now, because of the purpose I chose, a comment here is mandatory. So I'm going to go ahead and type in computer software subscription. So the advice I'm going to give you here is that you make sure to put in the comments that your particular approver needs to approve your report. So each department or faculty may be a little bit different, so I would get to know what your approver needs to approve the report and make sure you include that there. So one of the things that in my eagerness to get to this question, I missed the index. So let's back up a second. So for the index, I'm going to go ahead and keep this default because I'm working in the training environment. But if you click on this drop-down arrow here, you can search by either. And if you choose searching, again, by either, you can search for either text. So if, for example, business operations was going to pay for this particular software, I could search in this field for business operations, and then when that came up, I could choose that. I could also search for their index, which happens to be D482. So I could search for either of those, and then I could choose that. So if you want to change the index at the report level, this is where you do it. In this case, I'm going to leave the default index. And then we have activity code. So departments can use activity codes to group transactions over a range of funds or account codes. If you have questions about activity codes, reach out to your supervisor or departmental administrator. In this instance, I'm not going to put one in. Alright, so we answered the delegate question. I put in my comment here. So then we come down to claiming a travel advance. Travel allowance, excuse me, claiming a travel allowance. So a travel allowance, commonly called a per diem, can only be used when you travel. So in this case, I'm not traveling, so I'm going to go ahead and click no. And now I'm going to go ahead and click on the blue Create Report button. Alright, in the window that opens, I'm going to go ahead and add an expense line. So I'm going to click on the blue Add Expense button. For expense type, I can search for software in the search field, or SAP Concur has recently used, and you can see that I have computer, equipment, software supplies, so I'm just going to choose that from the list. Okay, so the expense type has just come up. The account code, I'm going to go ahead and leave the default. It's usually a right. However, you can choose from those listed if there's a better fit. So for the transaction date, they're looking for the date on the receipt, so I'm going to go ahead and choose August 11th. The vendor name, this is the company name, the vendor name on the receipt. In this case, I'm going to type in Viand. The city of purchase, I'm going to go ahead and put Ottawa, Ontario. So the city of purchase is important because as a university, we are eligible to receive back some of our tax, and that will be based on the city of purchase. So how do you know which city of purchase to put in? So if the company that I was buying from is located out of Toronto, but I've bought the software and I will be using it in Ottawa, then I'm going to put Ottawa, Ontario, because that's where I've consumed the good or service. Alright, so the city of purchase is important because it allows us to specify the city where we are consuming the good or service, and that drives whether or not we get tax back from a purchase. So this is an important field to get right. So then we come down to the payment type. We're going to leave out of pocket. We come to the amount. I'm going to put $600. The currency in this case is Canadian. So then we come down to receipt status. So in this case I have a receipt, so I'm going to leave it at that. And we come down to comment. So I'm only claiming one item in this particular report, so I'm not going to go ahead and add a comment because I already added one at the header level. So then we come to adding the digital receipt. So Concur, we only attach digital documentation, so I'm going to go ahead and add attach receipt image. And then in this particular example, we'll say that I scanned the image and saved it on my computer, so I'm going to go looking for it, and here I have it saved. So I'm going to click on that. So again, in this example, I went ahead and I scanned the image of my receipt. So here we have a receipt that I created for the purposes of training. Obviously, this would be an actual receipt if I was submitting a claim or my approver wouldn't approve it. But that's how I got the receipt into Concur. A little while later, we'll talk about some of the other ways that SAP Concur allows you to get receipts into Concur. So we'll cover that in a second. The last thing I want to say about receipts is keep your paper receipts until you've been paid by Carleton. Or if it's an email receipt, keep the email until you've been paid by Carleton, and then you can destroy the originals. Alright, so now let's see, I am going to go ahead and save the expense. And this is the only expense I have for this particular report, so I'm going to go ahead and click on the orange Submit Report button. I'm going to read the user electronic agreement, and then to attest that it's true, I'm going to click on Accept and Continue. So this acts as the wet signature that you used to put on the email that you would get once you submitted a report in the old system. So in the old system, you would submit this, you would get an email that you would have to print, sign, attach paper receipts to, and then send into business operations. Now, because it's all digital, you're not going to get an email. You won't have to put a wet signature. Clicking Accept and Continue is the same as putting a wet signature on the printed email that you used to have to do. All right. So it's going to tell you what Carleton will be paying you if that looks right. If it matches what you've requested, you're going to go ahead and submit the report. Okay, so it's asking me if I want to do a survey. That's up to you. In this case, I'm going to say no thanks for the purposes of this example. All right, so now here we are. You can see that the claim has been submitted, and that it's also telling you where it's sitting. So currently submitted and pending processor approval. So if you want to look at where it's sitting in a little bit more detail, you can click on the tile here. In the screen that opens, click on Report Details and choose Report Timeline from the drop-down menu. So, just very quickly looking at these two steps. So at the expense processor step, the administrator will check that the receipts match the expense lines. So if you're charging to a departmental fund, then this will go to accounts payable, or an ancillary, this will go to accounts payable, and they're going to check that your expenses match the policies, follow our policies, and that the receipts match the expense lines. If you're charging to a research fund, then this would go to Research Financial Services. Okay, so once, and they will go back and forth with you to make sure that the report can be submitted. So once they have okayed this, you'll get a green check here, and then it goes to the manager for approval. So approvers don't have to verify the things that have already been done by the expense processor. Instead, they're ensuring that the expenditures make sense given the area of study or the work that you do. You can still create a request to request reimbursement of prepaid expenses for travel that has not yet taken place. For example, common prepaid expenses are conference registration or airfare. This was called an authorization report in the old system. Because we're not traveling at the moment, I'm not going to show you a demo of this request. When you begin traveling again, there's a how-to sheet that will walk you through how to do this, or you can book a virtual office hour. So if you were issued prepaid expenses for travel expenses, so you received a cash advance request, when you've returned from your trip, you'll have to report on it. Again, as we won't be traveling for the foreseeable future, I'm not going to cover this in this session, but when you do begin traveling again, there's a how-to sheet that will walk you through it, or once again, you can book a virtual office hour. Alright, there's an app. Most things that you can do on a desktop, you can also do on the app. So there are how-to sheets for how to sign up, how to log on, and how to use the app. I mentioned early on that I would talk about how additional ways of getting receipts into Concur. So you can import receipts into Concur, photo capture of receipts with a mobile or tablet if you've downloaded the app. Supported languages are English, French, German, Danish, Dutch, Swedish, Finnish, and Norwegian. So the Concur app uses optical character recognition to pull information from your receipt and create an expense line in the system. It also attaches a photo of the receipt to that expense line so you don't have to scan the receipt. You can easily add them to reports. So please keep in mind that it's not always 100% accurate. From time to time you will need to modify the line item created by the system. However, it does learn as it goes, so if you correct a vendor or expense type, it will remember it the next time you use it. Alright, so a second way to get receipts into Concur is to email receipts to receipts@expensit.com. So if you receive your booking confirmations by email, you can forward them to receipts@expensit.com. Like the previous option, it will pull information out and attach the receipt. So as I mentioned in the profile demo, you'll have to verify your email address first, and there is a how-to sheet that will walk you through how to do that. So you can have your default email address, which will be your CUNet, Carleton CUNet email address, plus you can add up to 4 personal email addresses. So as a third option, you can connect your Concur profile with various vendors. So every time you make a purchase, it'll appear in your profile. So for example, airlines, hotels, Uber, or Starbucks, and it will give you the option to whether it's personal to pull it in or not. If it's personal, obviously you wouldn't pull it in. If it's business related, you can. So there isn't a how-to sheet for this one, but you can book a virtual office hour, and we can walk you through that if that's something you want to do. And then for option 4, you can also link to an American Express card, so a Carleton American Express card, and it will bring expense lines right into Concur for you. You'll just have to attach images of the related paper receipts. So again, if this is something you're interested in, you can book a virtual office hour and the team will walk you through that. So those are the four additional ways that you can get receipts into Concur. So now we're moving on to tips and tricks. So Carleton prefers, as an institution, Carleton prefers that we use purchasing cards whenever possible. So they're also called P cards. Whenever possible for non-travel expenses. So this is for travel. So for travel, you can really only use registration fees on a P card. Generally, it's for non-travel expenses. It's not mandatory. You can email purchasing services for more information about this. So the next tip, so approvers need as much information as possible. So make sure you fill in those comments that we talked about. Make sure you attach all the documentation, and that way your report will get approved quicker because there won't be as much back and forth if you attach everything you need in the first place. Alright, so then this is true generally for all applications. The back button on your internet browser is generally not your friend. So the best way to navigate an application like SAP Concur on the internet is to use the internal navigation. So use the X, use the close button, use the save button, or whatever other menu options are available within that particular application. So I mentioned warnings early on. SAP Concur has the following warnings. So yellow warning will tell you that you may have forgotten something, and it may prevent you from completing the task. So you just have to Read the warning, decide whether it's something you have to do or not, and then take care of it. A red warning is a hard stop, so you have to do something before you can move on. Now we get to the last slide. Do you need help? You can book a virtual office hour by going to carleton.ca/fax/travel virtual office hours. You can always email the financial systems team at financial.systems@carleton.ca. And again, if you go to carleton.ca/fax/travel, there's how-to sheets and other tools like this presentation available to you.